Hey, hey everyone. It's Naomi Wolf. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. As promised, I'm reading Exodus 29 from the Geneva Bible and comparing it, as we always do, to the Revised Standard Version and to the Hebrew. And I really hope I don't offend anyone with the scholarship or the interpretation we're doing today, because today's chapter is about the role of the priest. And again, let me see if you can hear me or see me, because there's been a lot of censorship lately, believe it or not. And right now, uh, I'm seeing 0 eyeballs. And if that's correct, something is wrong. Let me know if this is coming through. But Exodus 29, we've been going through chapter by chapter recently. It's still the instructions that God is giving to Moses about how God wants to live with his people, right? How to set up a home for God among his family, essentially the children of Israel. And we went through the construction of the Ark of the Covenant. And in the last chapter, we went through the clothing that the priest wears. Again, please let me know if you can hear me or see me, because literally I have 0 eyeballs. So there we go. Something may be wrong. But in this chapter, God is continuing to kind of specify what he needs, how he needs as God, right, to live with the children of Israel. And so now he's getting into kind of how sacrifices should be made and what the role of the priest is. And the reason I'm a little nervous about offending people with today's scholarship is that clearly, the Revised Standard Version and probably other modern translations change the role of the priest. And I wish there was a good word for this. We see it quite a lot in these translations, but it's officializing the role of the priest over time in ways that are not present in the Hebrew, or in the very what is the word, faithful to the Hebrew Geneva Bible. So I'm going to read the chapter to you, and then I'll read the Revised Standard variations, and then we'll look at the Hebrew. But what you're going to see is that what God is giving in the Hebrew to Moses, to Moshe, to pass on to Aaron, his brother, is a set of instructions about the process of making something holy. And the process of making something holy, and again, we don't have a verb for holy in English. To holyify, right, is what it would be. We do have that verb in Hebrew, lekadesh, right? And so all of this direction that we're about to hear is God saying, this is how you mekadesh, this is how you make holy eyes the food, this is how you holy eyes the person who officiates or who ministers or serves, as the Hebrew, as priest. This is how I want you to holy eyes all of these things, because I'm holy. Things that approach me can approach me better if they too are holy. And these are some rituals that I'm asking you to participate in, so that when you approach me, you will have been holy eyes. So what I want to stress to you is that God is going to give instructions for basically food, right? For creating a sacrifice of animals and bread that will bring a pleasant spirit, a sweet savor, is how it's translated often in the Hebrew Bible. I'm sorry, in the Geneva Bible, and I think probably in the King James Bible as well, because it's a famous phrase in English now, a sweet savor unto the Lord. But and there's a process to holy eyes the priest, right? How the priest can make himself and his person holy. And we're going to see that in the Revised Standard Version, that has turned into, again, I wish I had an adjective for it or a verb, officializing language. And the language will have changed into the bestowal of priestly authority onto a caste of priests from God, that kind of innately elevate that priest above humans, And that's just not what it says in the Hebrew. And so that's a big difference. And I really want you to think about it again without offending Roman Catholicism or Christianity or any religion. Think about how big that is, that this chapter starts out being, in its original language, being telling human beings who happen to serve as priests, right? How to make themselves holy so they can approach God. And it's a process that everyone has to go through in different ways. There are many, many directions from God to everyone, priest or not priest, about how to sanctify themselves to get closer to him, to approach him, to connect with him. And he's not spelling out a job description that priests, that elevate priests above everyone else or bestow innate godly or God ordained authority on them. He's not doing that. He's definitely saying this family, Aaron and his sons will be priests forever, will serve me in this role forever. He is saying that, but he's treating Aaron and his sons the way he treats every human being. In order to come closer to me, these are the steps you have to take to make yourself holy to me. And there's really something a little weird going on with the interwebs right now, because we have single digits viewers. Usually we have hundreds and hundreds at this point, but I will just plow on and do what we can do. It's really an interesting time in history. Just before I begin, I've been losing on various platforms hundreds and actually thousands of followers all at once, like all in one day. Very dramatic. And we're seeing a consolidation of social media, and not coincidentally, the same day that the Supreme Court ruled that Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff, the people who brought a suit, Missouri and Louisiana attorneys general who brought suit against the White House for pressuring social media companies to censor certain people. SCOTUS said today, the Supreme Court said today, that they that these people don't have standing to bring this case. It's a setback. It's not the end, but it's definitely a setback. And I just think it's super interesting that when a ruling came down that was, at least for now, a green light to censor people, I'm getting single digits when I usually have thousands or hundreds at this point, joining me eventually thousands by the end of the reading. But we'll carry on and hope that the word of God is more powerful than big tech censors. So let's just jump right in. And again, I'm reading from the 1560 Geneva Bible, The Role of Priests. And the subhead is so beautiful, the manner of consecrating the priests. Now listen to that. That word consecrate is very important. The continual sacrifice the Lord promises to dwell among the children of Israel. This thing also shall you do unto them when you consecrate them to be my priests. Take a young calf and 2 rams without blemish, and unleavened bread and cakes unleavened, tempered with oil, and wafers unleavened, anointed with oil. Of fine wheat flour shall you make them. They shall put them in one basket and present them in the basket with the calf and the 2 rams. And the note says to offer them in sacrifice. And shall bring Aaron and his sons unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation and wash them with water. And again, I want you to note that the Ark of the Covenant is divided only by a veil, a curtain from the rest of the people, the congregation. They're also inside the tent of meeting. Really important to keep saying that. This is like erased. It goes down the memory hole, that the people were invited to hang out with God, almost at the Holy of Holies, not quite, but right outside, separated by a curtain. They were hanging out with God. Really important, I think. And they were present for the sacrifices. They witnessed it. They participated. They were there. Everyone was invited to this feast, basically, for God, right? And shall bring Aaron and his sons unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation and wash them with water, meaning the young calf and 2 rams without blemish. Also, you shall take the garments and put upon Aaron the tunic and the robe of the ephod And the note says, which was next under the ephod, and the breastplate, and shall close them to him with the broidered guard of the ephod. So this is layers of sacred clothing that the priest is wearing. Then you shall put the mitre upon his head, and shall put the holy crown upon the mitre. And you shall take the anointing oil, and shall pour upon his head, and anoint him. And you shall bring his sons, and put coats upon them, and shall gird them with girdles, and those are belts essentially, both Aaron and his sons, and shall put the bonnets on them, and the priest's office shall be theirs for a perpetual law. Now, the priest's office is not an ordination, it is a role of service, all right? So the priest's office, the job, right, will be theirs. The job of serving will be theirs for a perpetual law. You shall also fill the hands of Aaron in the hands of his sons. Pay very close attention to this passage, line 9. We're going to come back to it because it changes a lot. After you, so just note, like, I really want you to pay attention to this. The language God is using here is this family, Aaron and his kids, his sons, get to serve in this role, the community and God, perpetually as a law. He's not saying they're ordained, all right? He's not saying, there's nothing about ordination. It is a position of service. It is a position of support to help people worship God and to mediate between the community, not mediate, help the community connect with God, all right? It is not elevating the priest. It's definitely giving him certain responsibilities, but it's not elevating, it's not bestowing authority, it's bestowing a job, all right? After you shall present the calf before the tabernacle, meaning tent of the congregation. Remember, everyone's there in the tent. And Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the calf. And the note says, signifying that the sacrifice was also offered for them and that they did approve it. So again, these people are not perfect, the priests. They also need to offer a sacrifice. They're not perfect. They're not holy already. They have to engage in the process of becoming holy, holifying, right? That word we don't have in English. So you shall kill the calf before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Then you shall take of the blood of the calf and put it upon the horns of the altar with your finger, and shall pour all the rest of the blood at the foot of the altar. Also, you shall take all the fat that covers the innards, and the caul that is on the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and shall burn them upon the altar. But the flesh of the calf and his skin and his dung shall you burn with fire without the host, meaning outside the crowd. It is a sin offering. You shall also take 1 ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Then you shall kill the ram and take his blood and sprinkle it round upon the altar. And you shall cut the ram in pieces and wash the innards of him and his legs, and shall put them upon the pieces thereof and upon his head. So you shall burn the whole ram upon the altar, for it is a burnt offering unto the Lord for a sweet savor. And there's that lovely phrase. It is an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And the note says, or a savor of rest, which causes the wrath of God to cease. Again, I will say that that is a 16th century edition, because there is no wrath of God here. God's wrath is not in the Hebrew. He's not angry, right? And you shall take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Then you shall kill the ram and take of his blood and put it upon the lap of Aaron's ear, meaning the lobe, and upon the lap of the right ear of his sons, and upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the great toe, the big toe of their right foot, and shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about. And this very sweet note says, meaning the soft and nether under part of the ear. And you shall take the blood that is upon the altar and of the anointing oil, and shall sprinkle it upon Aharon and upon his garments, and upon his sons, and upon the garments of his sons with him. So shall he be hallowed, and his clothes, and his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. Hallowed. So in the 16th century, they still had a word, which was a verb for make holy, and that's to hallow. And All Hallows Eve is a noun derivative of that verb. We don't use it anymore. We don't say, I'm going to hallow, my new apartment, or I'm going to hallow my wedding ring by blessing it, or hallow my baby with a baptism. But to hallow means to make holy, and it's the closest English parallel to lekadesh, right? To holyify. But that's what line 21 says, that the priest will be hallowed. It does not say he will be ordained. Pay attention. Also, you shall take of the rams the fat and the rump, even the fat that covers the inwards, and the gall of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and the right shoulder, for it is the ram of consecration. And pay attention to that word, because it's going to change. And the note says, which is offered for the consecration of the priest, right? This ram is sacrificed because the priest isn't holy. He's not yet like God. He's still just a flawed human being, carrying flaws. He has to be made holy by this process again and again and again. There is no ordination here. There is consecration, very different. And 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of bread tempered with oil, and 1 wafer out of the basket of the unleavened bread that is before the Lord. And you will put all this in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and shall shake them to and fro before the Lord. Again, you shall receive them of their hands and burn them upon the altar, besides the burnt offering for a sweet savor before the Lord. For this is an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Likewise, you will take the breast of the ram of the consecration. Again, we're going to come back to this. It says consecration, not ordination, which is for Aaron, and you shall shake it to and fro before the Lord, and it shall be your part. And you shall sanctify the breast of the shaken offering and the shoulder of the heave offering, which means to shake, to wave, which was shaken to and fro, and which was heaved up of the ram of the consecration, which was for Aaron and which was for his sons. And the note, understandably, because that's a little confusing, says, this sacrifice the priest did move toward the east, west, north, and south. And when it says heave offering, it says so called because it was not only shaken to and fro, but also lifted up. Isn't that interesting? Because to this day, in Native American ceremonies, they will shake a sacred ritual object into the 4 directions and end by lifting it up. And so this is a gesture that has been lost to time, because we no longer hear about it. I mean, I've read this heave offering forever, and literally have no idea what they're heaving or where. And so this 1560 text remembered enough, or invented, but possibly remembered, that the priests would offer it to the 4 directions and then up to God, which is really kind of an intuitively beautiful, sensible gesture that, you're kind of drawing in all of the earthly plane and then raising it up to offer it to Yahweh, the Lord, who is everywhere, but also his kingdom is in the skies, as we know, in Shamayim. All right. And Aaron, okay. And Aaron and his sons shall have it by a statute forever of the children of Israel, for it is an heave offering, and it shall be a heave offering of the children of Israel of their peace offerings, even their heave offering to the Lord. Now, pay attention. This is going to change. This passage doesn't say anything about God saying this is the priest's portion. It says it's an offering of the people of Israel. It doesn't say, it doesn't use the words priest's portion. All right, we'll come back to that. And the holy garments which belong to Aaron shall be his sons after him, to be anointed therein and to be consecrate therein. And the note about the heave offering says, which were offerings of thanks, giving to God for his benefices, for his goodness, his gifts. Benefices are gifts. That son shall be priest in his stead. That son that shall be priest in his stead shall put them on 7 days when he comes into the tabernacle of the congregation to minister in the holy place. So ye shall take the ram of the consecration and seethe his flesh in the holy place, boil the meat in the holy place. And Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram and the bread that is in the basket at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And again, I just want to remind you, in later kind of Sunday school narratives about what the priests are doing and where, they're behind the curtain and it's very mysterious. Well, in the Hebrew, and in the Geneva Bible, they're eating their share of this offering because they do get a share, right? Right outside the door of the tent with everyone, right in public, super transparent. It's all among the people. It's all being done among the people, except for a few very sacred things where the priest steps behind the curtain and hangs out with the Holy of Holies. So they shall eat these things by which their atonement was made to consecrate them and to sanctify them. But a stranger shall not eat thereof, because they are holy things. Now, if anything of the flesh, the meat of the consecration or of the bread remain unto the morning, then you shall burn the rest with fire. It shall not be eaten, because it is a holy thing. Because they are holy things. I'm sorry, because it is a holy thing. Therefore shall you do thus unto Aaron and unto his sons, according to all things which I have commanded you. 7 days shall you consecrate them, and shall offer every day a calf or a sin offering for reconciliation, meaning reconciling God, who's perfect, with human beings who are not perfect. This is, again, a technology to bring these two in harmony and closer together. They're made of kind of different vibrations almost, and it seems like this is another technology that helps people align better with God and vice versa for reconciliation. And you shall cleanse the altar when you have offered upon it for reconciliation, and shall anoint it to sanctify it. And again, the note says, to appease God's wrath, the sin may be pardoned. But I just want you to note, no disrespect to Christians, these are 16th century Christians, Reformation Christians, Protestants, making this note. There is no wrath. God's not wrathing in the Hebrew. He just isn't. I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of, God's, anger and upset when people do horrible things. That's real. We've seen it. But here, many thousands years later, totally different culture of Christian Protestants is superimposing an interpretation about appeasing God's wrath, when certainly there's been language of atonement and sin, but God's not wrathful. There's no wrath yet in this text. And shall offer every day a calf or sin offering for reconciliation, and you shall cleanse the altar when you have offered upon it for reconciliation, and shall anoint it to sanctify it. 7 days shall you cleanse the altar and sanctify it. So the altar shall be most holy, and whatsoever touches the altar shall be holy. So again, it's a process of making holy. Now this is that which you shall present upon the altar, even 2 lambs of 1 year old, day by day continually. The one lamb you shall present in the morning, and the other lamb you shall present at evening. And with the one lamb, a 10th part of fine flour mingled with the 4th part of an hin, which is a measure, that is an omer, which is an ancient measure of beaten oil, and the 4th part of an hin of wine for a drink offering. And the note says, which is about a pint. I love how helpful and down to earth the notes are. And the other lamb you shall present at evening. You shall do thereto according to the offering of the morning, meaning do the same, and according to the drink offering thereof, to be a burnt offering for a sweet savor unto the Lord. This shall be a continual burnt offering in your generations at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. And again, the door is not the Holy of Holies. The door is where everyone can gather outside the Holy of Holies. I just think that's so important. Okay, this shall be a continual burnt offering in your generations at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, where I will make appointment with you and speak there unto you. And the note says, or declare myself to you. So literally in this early translations, faithful translation, God is saying, I will talk to you. And he's saying, I will talk to you. I will meet with you at the door. He's saying at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, where I will make appointment with you and speak there unto you. So he's talking to Moshe, and maybe he's just going to speak with Moshe, but you definitely have a clear sense that he may be, only speaking directly to Moshe and meeting directly with Moshe, but everyone else gets to be very nearby, gets to participate, gets to, watch the flames, smell the scent of the sacrifice, be, present when these incredible things are happening. There I will appoint with the children of Israel. He's saying, actually, I'll meet with all you guys, and the place shall be sanctified by my glory. And I will sanctify the tabernacle of the congregation and the altar. I will sanctify also Aaron and his sons to be my priests. He's not ordaining them. He's sanctifying them because they're human and they're not holy until he sanctifies them. And even then, they're not forever holy. They're just holy while while this sanctification is happening. All right. In other words, they don't change materially, right? I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but it's really important to understand this early role of the priest in this religion. The priest was not different from other human beings. The priest wasn't elevated beyond other human beings. The priest didn't even have particularly more direct access to what God had to say. God is literally saying, I'll meet with you, Moshe, I'll connect with the priest, and I'll meet with all the children of Israel, right? He's literally saying that. So the idea that the priest gets kind of taken up by God and elevated to become a bottleneck or a mouthpiece, that you have to go through in order to get close to God or to hear God or to talk to God, just does not exist in the Hebrew. It is a later extrapolation, centuries into the consolidation of, first Judaism, right, with the elaboration of rabbinical Judaism, and even first and second temple priests were, more codified, obviously, than this very kind of laid back, let's make the Holy of Holies in our backyard and we'll all hang out there and have a barbecue. It's kind of what this sounds like. I mean, I'm not being sacrilegious. It's just very casual and accessible. Obviously, by the time we get to the first temple, the second temple, there's a lot more priestliness going on, very institutionalized, even more so, after the exile with rabbinical Judaism, but rabbis were never, ever, ever seen as being a mouthpiece to God. And then Christianity, of course, we're jumping way ahead with upon this rock I'll found my church, Paul and the Roman Catholic Church, and the elaboration of the role of the priest, what is it, kind of perfection of the Pope and his infallibility. All of these are not ideas that are in this stage of what became the Judeo-Christian tradition. They just came later, and you can take or leave that, but that's just the case. And I will sanctify the tabernacle of the congregation and the altar I will sanctify also Aaron and his sons to be my priests, and I will dwell among the children of Israel and will be their God. He's not saying I'll rule over them, they get to bow down to me. He's saying I will live among them. I will dwell among them. That's where he wants to be. That's what he's really working hard to try to arrange, is to hang out with us, right? At our level, in our midst. He's not too fancy for that. That's what he's trying to do here. Then shall they know that I am the Lord their God that brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. And the note says, it is I, the Lord, that am their God. Perhaps two iterations of the same sentence to get closer to the Hebrew. Well, isn't that interesting? God's not saying, I brought the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt so that they would worship me, right? That's always how it's presented, or at least it has been, to me, as in my life, going to Reform and conservative synagogues, not Orthodox, because they read the text, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying they'll know that I am the Lord your God that brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might, which means in Elizabethan language or pre-Elizabethan, so that I might dwell among them. He brought them out of Egypt to be closer to them, right? He brought them out of slavery so that he could build this relationship with them, in which he's giving them all these technologies to align with him, to connect with him, so that he can kind of come down to our level and live with us. That's what he's saying here. No one ever translated it that way for me in my whole kind of life, reading all the major religions. So now let's look at some very kind of, I'm going to say, surprising changes in the RSV. And again, please don't be mad at me. And because I didn't do this, I'm just pointing it out. So line 8 in the Revised Standard Version says, then you shall bring his sons, meaning Aaron's sons, and put coats on them, and you shall gird them with girdles and bind caps on them, and the priesthood shall be theirs by a perpetual statute. It doesn't say that in the Hebrew. It says they get to serve in this job, right? It doesn't say the priesthood will belong to them by law, right? And also, priesthood isn't really the word. It's the service, serving the community as a priest in the Hebrew. Thus you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. No, it doesn't say anything about ordination in the Geneva Bible, and it doesn't say anything about ordination in the Hebrew. That's, we're seeing so many of these later mistranslations. And again, I wish I had a word for it. It's kind of an officializing or a religionizing, backwards, putting in language that makes sense in a modern, highly complex church structure with priests. Oh, you're ordaining the priest, you're ordaining the minister, that vests the minister with certain authorities, certain powers. No, that's just not in the Hebrew or the Geneva Bible. It's not an ordination. It's not a ritual that elevates anyone above anyone else, or gives anyone powers to get closer to God than anyone else in any material way, right? Except to serve. As I said, I'm in a role to help. The ordination is not there. It's read backwards. Then the other mistranslation I want to say is in line 19. It says, and he and his garments shall be holy, and his sons' garments with him. Well, in the Revised Standard Version, it's just kind of making the priest's garments holy. They're magically holy. That's not what's in the Hebrew, and it's not what's in the Geneva Bible. They're hallowed. They're mekadesh. They're being made holy by this process. And again, you have to go through it again and again and again, because, you don't stay holy if you're a priest. You're just a human being like everyone else. So this is a process of sanctification, like the burning the meat or the anointing of the bread. These are all rituals, technologies really to make something holy that otherwise isn't more holy than anything else. So his clothes don't magically become holy just because he's a priest. Again, in line 22, it says, it's talking about taking the fat and the organs and the liver and the kidneys, and that's accurately translated. But here it says it's the lamb of ordination. Again, in the Revised Standard Version, this whole thing is turned into a narrative about ordaining priests and kind of bringing priests into a structure of authority. That's not in the original, not in the Geneva Bible, not in the Hebrew. It's not a ram of ordination. In the Geneva Bible, it's a ram of consecration. Again, hallowing, all right? And you shall take the breast of the ram of Aaron's ordination. Again, in line 26, it's not there. And then when they're talking about what you do with all this meat, the Revised Standard Version says, it shall be for Aaron and his sons as a perpetual due from the people of Israel, for it is the priest's portion to be offered by the people of Israel from their peace offerings. It is their offering to the Lord. No, don't be mad at me. It doesn't say that. All right. So in the Revised Standard Version, line 28, it's basically saying you'll give a tithe to the church or the synagogue forever because God says you have to. And you're going to give it to the priests, right? But that's not what it says. This is so important. It's not due from as a perpetual due from the people of Israel, for it is the priest's portion. No, it totally does not say that. Let's go back to line 28 in the Geneva Bible. It says, and Aaron and his sons shall have it as a statute forever, meaning that portion of the meat of the children of Israel. For it is an heave offering, and it shall be an heave offering of the children of Israel, of their peace offerings, even their heave offering to the Lord. That's the same passage. It doesn't say anything about this, this valuable product is due from the people of Israel, for it is the priest's portion. It just doesn't say that, to be offered by the people of Israel from their peace offerings. It is their offering to the Lord. It doesn't say that. It just doesn't. I mean, I read to you what it actually says, which is totally different. It is a heave offering, meaning they waived it, and it shall be a heave offering of the children of Israel, of their peace offerings, even their heave offering to the Lord. So it doesn't say anything about a priest's portion, and it doesn't say anything about like a taxation due from the children of Israel. It's definitely saying, Aaron and his sons get some of this meat. So it's definitely setting up a way for priests to have an income, essentially. But it's not saying you have to, build up giant treasuries in any organized religion because God says so. It's not saying that. And then later on in line 29, the Revised Standard Version says, the holy garments of Aaron shall be for his sons after him, to be anointed in them and ordained in them. No, that word is not there. It is consecrated, mekadesh. And then they go on, line 31, you shall take the ram of ordination and boil its flesh in a holy place. They shall eat those things, line 33, with which atonement was made to ordain and consecrate them. But an outsider shall not eat of them because they are holy. Doesn't say that. It says consecrate and sanctify in the Geneva Bible. So there's just tons of ordination, peppered throughout this chapter in the Revised Standard Version that does not exist. And then again in 34, and if any of the flesh for the ordination, and in the Geneva Bible, it's consecration, mekadesh, or of the bread, remain until morning, you shall burn the remainder with fire. It shall not be eaten because it is holy. Line 35, thus you shall do to Aaron and to his sons according to all that I've commanded you through 7 days shall you ordain them. So ordain, not trying to be rude. It's the Revised Standard Version just makes the whole thing about ordination, and it's not. It's about how the priests, who are real emissaries from the people to God and vice versa, can become holy so that they can serve in this role. And then line 43, it's, I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. Aaron also and his sons I will consecrate to serve me as priest. And in the Geneva Bible, it's to be my priests. So that's reasonably accurate. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God who brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. That is accurate. All right. Well, I hope you see why I'm kind of stunned. It's a dramatic change in translation, and it definitely sets up a concern as if it was God's concern that isn't, right? God is not concerned with ordination. He's concerned with ways to come closer to his people, and people who can be in that role to help him. And so I just want to take a look at the Hebrew, at some of these passages. Let's see what we've got here. Now, this is so interesting, line 9, about, what are priests for? So in Hebrew, it says, the chagerta, chagura is a belt, otam, you, avnet Aharon, ubanav, v'chavashta lahem, so you'll gird them with sashes or belts, Aaron and his son, and you shall dress them with high hats, mi gavaot high, v'haita lahem kehuna, and the kahuna, the kohen, the priesthood, lechukat olam, will be a law forever. Olam means world, but it also means forever. Umaleta et Aharon v'yad banav. And umaleta yad Aharon v'yad malav, and you will fill the hand of Aaron and the hand of his sons. So in the English translation, there's something added that isn't there, which is, and you shall invest Aaron and his sons with full authority. So it just feels to me like every religion can't resist in this moment saying that rabbis and priests and priests have been invested by God with authority. But that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says you'll fill his hand and his son's hands. It doesn't say you'll fill their hands with authority. Maybe it means that in, a context of thousands of years ago, but it literally doesn't say that. It says you'll fill their hands. And in the context, it really sounds like it means you'll give them enough to eat. You'll give them some of the bread, you'll give them some of the boiled meat, so that they can do something other than farming or shepherding and serve me. And then let's see what they say for 21. Okay, remember, you shall take some of the blood that is upon the altar and some of the anointing oil and sprinkle it upon Aaron and his garments and upon his sons and upon the garments of his sons with him. Thus he will become holy along with his garments. Remember, in the Revised Standard Version, his clothes just were magically holy. In the Hebrew, it says, v'kadashu, and that's just what I thought we would find. Kodesh is holy, but lekadesh is the verb to make holy, and v'kadashu, and he made holy, ubgadav, and his clothes, uvanav, ubigdei vanav ito, and his clothes, and his sons and their clothes with him. So this process is making Aaron holy. He doesn't magically become holy just because he's a priest. Sorry to be rude. Let's look down at 28. And 28 says, V'haya Aaron, and it was to Aaron, ulevanav, and to his sons, lechok olam, as a law for the world forever, me'et b'nei Israel, from the children of Israel, ki trumahu, as an offering, it is utruma yeh, and an offering it will be me'et bnei Israel, from the children of Israel, mizbechei shalmehem trumatam laAdonai, mizbechei shalmehem, from their peace offerings. It's an offering, it is their offering to God. So I just read to you that set of lines that translates as, this is due to the priests from the children of Israel, and they have to give it to the priests forever. It's their portion. That's just not there. Everyone's offering, to God, and there's an allotment for the priests, but it's an offering. It's not due. There's a big difference in the words. It's not a tax that you have to pay. It's an offering. It will remain an offering of their peace offering. So the voluntary nature here is stressed. And so remember, they translated in the Revised Standard Version, ram of perfection, they translated as ram of ordination. And this says, ve'et ayal, and the ram, hamiluim, the of perfection. Tikach u bishalta et besaro, take it and boil it, his meat, be makom kadosh, in a holy place. So nothing about ordination here. And so this is line 33, very important. Remember, in the Revised Standard Version, it was again about ordination, and the Hebrew is ve'ochlu otam, and you, plural, imperative, will eat them, meaning the bread and the meat. Achlu otam asher kupar, with which atonement bahem has been affected in them, essentially. Lemale et yadam, to fill their hands. Lekadesh otam, to sanctify, to make holy them. V'zar lo yochal, and a stranger will not eat. Ki kodesh hem, because they are holy. That's line 33. You just heard it. Now, in the Revised Standard Version, I'm going to read it again. I don't mean to be upset or angry, but I just think people shouldn't be misled about what's in the Word of God. 33 is, they shall eat those, in the Revised Standard Version, they shall eat those things with which atonement was made, to ordain and consecrate them. And it sounds in the translation like this refers to the priests, but it doesn't. It refers to the food. But an outsider shall not eat of them, because they are holy. Again, they're putting ordination where it isn't, and they're translating it as if the ordaining and consecrating has to do with the priests, but it doesn't. It has to do with the food. And then the next line is, and if any of the flesh for the ordination or of the bread remain until morning, you shall burn the remainder. It doesn't say that. In Hebrew, it says, ve'im yoter yevater, and if will remain, mibsar, from the meat, hamiluim, of the perfection, and maleh also means full or complete, right? Umin halechem, and from the bread, ad haboker, until the morning, vesarafta, and you shall burn, et notal, that which is left over, ba'esh, in the fire, lo yochel ki kadoshu, don't eat it because it's holy. You just heard it. There's no ordination. And in the Revised Standard Version, it's the flesh for the ordination. It's not. I'm sorry. And then line 35 in the Revised Standard Version, thus you shall do to Aaron and to his sons according to all that I've commanded you. Through 7 days shall you ordain them. So once again, they're making it all about ordination. It's not. In line 35 here, it's ve'asita, and you will do, le'aharon, to Aaron, ulevanav, and to his sons, kechol, like this, all, asher tzaviti, that I've commanded, otacha, to you, shiv'a yamim, 7 days, temale yadam, you will fill their hand. nothing about ordination. You will fill their hand. And again, the English translation from the Hebrew can't resist. And they translate this, you shall perform their investiture. But it doesn't say that. It just says you will fill their hand. And again, in context, it really sounds like they're saying, they're talking about all this food and all this meat and all this oil on bread. And it really says, in context, you'll make sure that these priests who are doing this important job of service get enough to eat. You'll fill their hand with the food. You won't be stingy with it. You'll make sure that they're well fed. They'll don't let my servants in this important ritual go hungry. That's how it is in context. And I'm just going to read the last 2 lines because they're so beautiful. 3 lines, so beautiful. All right, 4 lines. It's just so beautiful because God is literally saying, you never hear this. Like, I'm going to hang out with you. I want to meet with you. You're my date. I want to see you at 6 o'clock at this place. Aditi, and I'll arrange a meeting, Shama, there, Livnei Israel, to the children of Israel, the Nikdash Bichvodi, and I will make holy in my honor. It's translated sanctified by my glory, which is very out there, God's so fancy. It's really like I'll meet there with the children of Israel and I will make holy in my honor. I'm God, so where I am is going to be holy, and I'll make it holy, and I'm giving you directions to make it holy so we can hang out together. But it's definitely not, I don't know, sanctified by my glory sounds a little like, I'll just say that the character of God in later translations sounds pretty narcissistic and full of himself. And the persona of God in the Hebrew is very modest and kind of downplaying how different he is from human beings in order to be closer to them. V'kadashti et ohel, and I will holify, I'll hallow, I'll make holy the tent of meeting, et ohel moed, the tent where we meet, ve'et ha-mizbeach, and the altar, ve'et Aharon, ve'et banav, and Aaron, and his children, his sons, akadesh lekohen li. I will make holy to serve me as kohanim, as priests. And again, the last name Cohen, you're familiar with it. It's a Jewish last name that descends from this family of priests. Incredible. V'shachanti, and you remember that word, Mishkan, the dwelling place, the Ark of the Covenant. Its root is shochen, which is a neighbor, right, to dwell next to. So he's saying v'shachanti, and I will live as a neighbor. Betoch bnei Israel. Betoch means inside. You could also translate it among, but it really literally means inside. So it means among and inside. So God is saying, I'm going to be a neighbor among and inside. Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, my family, all of you. V'hayiti lahem le'elohim, and I will be to them to a God. In the Hebrew, it's much more relational than the translation, I will be their God. He's saying, I will be in relationship to them as a God, right? Like, obviously he's God, he's their God, but he's stressing in the Hebrew much more the relationality. It almost sounds like I'll support them as their God. I'll connect with them as their God, right? Ve yadu ki, and they'll know that Ani Adonai Elohehem, I am Adonai, their God, Asher Hotzeti Atem, who has exited them, Otam, them, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, Leshachni Betocham, to neighborly myself within them, among them, Betocham, Ani Adonai Elohehem, I am the Lord their God. So beautiful, so different from what we're told. And that's my reading for today. I hope you enjoyed that. according to Google, there are 5 people watching, so something weird is going on. And let's see what comments or questions people have. Carolyn Carson says, "Thank you for carrying on." Thank you, Carolyn. I'm anticipating, a much ramped up censorship regime now, unfortunately. And there's a lot of trolling. Kevin Michael says, "The Christianity that immediately followed Mosaic law is the correct path, not the churchianity founded by Emperor Constantine and his mother, Helena." Well, I will not contradict you. I think everyone for these readings will find their own, his or her own meaning or takeaway. Um, I'm not trying to cast doubts or aspersion on any religion. Uh, and if that's your observation, I think that's interesting. I mean, obviously, I want to get as close as possible to the original. That's why I'm doing this. But I think it's really interesting how these religions, I guess it's natural, it's human nature. Over time, things get further and further away from that first powerful message, right? But I'm not going to say one path or another is correct. That's not why I'm doing this, but that's an interesting observation. And he adds in the 4th century, and that's historically correct. Yeah, Adrian Grant says sanctify would do for holy eyes, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yes, Mikadesh. It would with there's a little bit of a difference in the language. Sanctify still sounds like it's something that only God can do, right? Whereas in Hebrew, lekadesh, it's something humans can do, and so much of Judaism is mikadeshing, humans making holy totally ordinary things like washing their hands, or there's a prayer for going to the bathroom, believe it or not, or blessing bread or blessing wine. And they're not saying that they have, I mean, obviously holiness comes from God, but humans have a role in the verb mekadesh. So to me, sanctify is still a little bit distant for mekadesh. For example, when you marry someone in the Jewish religions to this day, I mean, my husband, who's actually Roman Catholic, and I said these words to each other, Hine at mekudeshet li, here you are made holy unto me. So it's a little more immediate than sanctified. Like it wouldn't feel so close by, so accessible if on the altar when you're getting married you say, "Here you are sanctified to me." It could, but it to me that seems a little bit more formal. We don't really, basically we don't. It's an okay translation, but sometimes I need to tease out what's missing in English for you to really understand the valence of the Hebrew. And mikadesh is a huge verb for this project, for what we're doing, because mikadesh is throughout the Old Testament, and the whole project is to teach humans lekadesh, right, with God, to make things holy with God, for God, in alliance with God. But that's very interesting. Senator Bluto says, "I'm not even religious, but thank you, Naomi. It's very interesting. Unleavened bread on a campfire is fun and tasty. Try it." Well, thank you. And that that's not even a random observation, because we still eat unleavened bread because of just that. The children of Israel were fleeing an army and couldn't wait for their bread to rise. So they had to cook it the way you just described, over a campfire, in effect, without waiting for the yeast to rise. And that's why we have matzah. So we still remember, which is kind of amazing that we still remember these things, right? And Senator Bluto says, "I prefer this woman to her evil doppelganger." I'll end on that note. That's really funny, kind of an inside joke. But for those who are not familiar with it, I have someone who claims that I'm her doppelganger and has written a whole book about it. But we'll just ignore that, because it's bad vibes, and we're all about good vibes here. And so thank you Thank you for joining me. I hope you found that interesting. I hope nobody's offended. And we will pick up again. I'm actually getting a lot of momentum reading these daily. So I'll try to pick up again tomorrow. And oh, wow. And Barry Atkinson says US copyright and publishing laws as to changing at least 10% of words in revised Bibles wreck the meaning of holiness. I will really need to look into that because if there's a copyright, I mean, I thought the Bible was in the public domain by now, but it sounds like there may be something to that. So we'll take a look. That really would explain the kind of mission creep, right? If you have to change a certain amount of words in order to issue a new edition with new copyright, that's an incentive to change things. There are only so many accurate ways to translate a word from Hebrew into English. All right, I hate to leave you all, but thank you for joining me, and I hope I will see you tomorrow for Exodus 30. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening, and I will see you soon. And please support us. You can get all of these on Substack on Dr. Naomi Wolf Reads the Geneva Bible. And please support me as much as you can because the censors are coming down and we may need to move altogether to another platform. So the more you can sign up there, become ideally paid subscribers. If you can't afford it, free subscribers on that Substack, the better off we'll be if we need to take everyone to another home if we face more censorship. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.